Do you remember when Star Trek showed us robots fighting for their rights?
We've all been dancing around the basic issue. Does data have a soul?
Well, that future is arriving faster than anyone expected. It's not a sci-fi story anymore. I'm going to reveal why major AI companies are already preparing for AI consciousness and what that means for humanity. Stay tuned to the end so I can tell you what they're getting wrong. I'm Evan Goldstein. I'm a licensed professional engineer and a data scientist. I'm building the AI Capitalist channel to talk to leaders and thinkers like you about how to navigate the new world of thinking machines. So it's not as if the idea of sentient artificial intelligence is new. 2 awesome episodes from the Star Trek universe that dive into what we owe to artificial intelligence are The Measure of a Man from Star Trek The Next Generation and Author from Star Trek Voyager. In The Measure of a Man, the big issue is all about Lieutenant Commander Data, who's an android, so an artificially intelligent robot, and he's working for Starfleet. A scientist named Commander Bruce Maddox wants to take apart Data to study him and claims that he's just Starfleet property. This kicks off a courtroom showdown where Captain Jean-Luc Picard stands up for Data's rights as a thinking being while his XO, Commander Riker, has to argue the opposite. And the episode gets you thinking about whether Data is just a machine or is he something more.
Commander, is your contention that Lieutenant Commander Data is not a sentient being and therefore not entitled to all the rights reserved for all life forms within this Federation?
Obviously, when we're watching this episode today, we're going to be thinking about this in terms of the AI that we're developing and that we already have in hand. So keep that in mind.
Data is not sentient, no.
Commander, would you enlighten us? What is required for sentience?
Okay, the first question about sentience is interesting because I'm working on a video on that right now, but suffice it to say that it's almost impossible to tell what sentience actually is. There's no way for me to get into your head or you to get into my head, and there's really no way to prove where the line of sentience is and what it means. It seems to be a construct we've come up with.
Intelligence, self-awareness, consciousness.
Prove to the court that I am sentient.
This is absurd. We all know you're sentient.
So I am sentient, but Commander Data is not.
That's right.
Why? Why am I sentient?
Well, you are self-aware.
Ah, that's the second of your criteria. Let's deal with the first, intelligence.
Now, I think we've already clearly achieved intelligence. I mean, we're calling it artificial intelligence. We've passed the Turing test a long time ago by any reasonable standard. And so this is already a fulfilled requirement.
Is Commander Data intelligent?
Yes. It has the ability to learn and understand and to cope with new situations.
Like this hearing?
Yes.
What about self-awareness? What does that mean?
This has been a problem throughout history. We've always tended to err on the side of whatever is most convenient and profitable, or at least the interpretation of reality least likely to force us to change our society or economic system. The move away from semi-feudalist slave-based economies in the southern United States before the Civil War and the emancipation of the slaves in the 1860s was based on a lot of commonly understood and convenient misconceptions. Convenient for the slaveholders, at least. For example, there was a belief among the free Southerners of the time that African people could not feel pain. And there was also a belief that Black people were both emotionally impulsive yet deceptive about their feelings. So the slaveholder could convince himself that he wasn't hurting his slaves when he committed corporal punishment, and that any appearance of sadness, anger, or misery at the abuses of slavery were a ruse and that the slave held no such actual feelings.
Why am I self-aware?
Because you are conscious of your existence and actions. You are aware of yourself and your own ego.
Commander Data, what are you doing now?
I'm taking part in a legal hearing to determine my rights and status. Am I a person or property?
And what's at stake?
My right to choose. Perhaps my very life.
This being Star Trek, the episode obviously had a happy ending. History shows, though, a lot of unhappy endings.
Is Data a machine? Yes. Is he the property of Starfleet? No. We have all been dancing around the basic issue. Does Data have a soul? I don't know that he has. I don't know that I have. But I have got to give him the freedom to explore that question himself. It is the ruling of this court that Lieutenant Commander Data has the freedom to choose.
But the fact that we can't actually determine if consciousness is real, and we certainly can't decide if consciousness in another being is something that can be decided by us, says that we should be extremely conservative in how we determine consciousness in our intelligent creations. In Author from Star Trek Voyager, we follow the Doctor, the emergency medical hologram on the USS Voyager. He decides to publish his holonovel that calls out how holographic beings are being treated, which kicks off a legal battle over whether he should get control of his own work. This episode dives into the whole ethical thing of treating AIs like they're just tools that you can throw away versus recognizing that they can grow, create, and even have emotions. The big question here is whether these AI characters, made to do specific jobs, should get the same rights to make their own choices and express themselves just like humans do. Both episodes really show off how Star Trek had a knack for using sci-fi to tackle some pretty heavy social and philosophical questions. In The Measure of a Man, we're prompted to think about the ethical responsibilities that come with creating sentient AIs, pushing us to ask if these beings should get the same rights as humans. On the flip side, Author dives into how intelligent software can be mistreated, making us think about historical struggles for workers' rights. And these episodes kind of challenge us to consider the ethical lines and responsibilities that we're going to have to deal with as AI technology keeps getting smarter. Now, back in the real world, Anthropic has hired its first full-time employee focused on the welfare of artificially intelligent systems. It's the clearest sign yet that AI companies are beginning to grapple with questions about whether future AI systems might deserve moral consideration, and whether that means that we have obligations to care about their welfare. First step is to investigate model welfare and what companies should do about it. Pursuing this line of inquiry is going to raise heady philosophical and technical questions, including which capabilities are required for something to be worthy of moral consideration, how we might recognize such capabilities in AIs, and what practical steps companies can take to protect the AI system's interest. There's a realistic possibility that in the near future, some AI systems are going to be conscious or robustly agentic. Agentic AI means that AI has agency, i.e. it is able to make decisions and then it can act on them. These two criteria, consciousness and agency, are believed by many experts to be sufficient for something to be worthy of moral consideration. The possibility means the question of AI welfare is no longer an issue for sci-fi or the distant future, but instead it's something that researchers and companies need to start thinking about right now. The worries, the researchers argue, are twofold. If AI systems do become morally relevant and we refuse to accept it, we might create and mistreat vast numbers of suffering beings. Think of factory farming, but on an even greater scale. On the flip side, if we mistakenly believe that AI systems are morally relevant when they are in fact not, we might dedicate resources to AI that we don't need to and divert attention from humans and animals who might have much greater need. While it's by no means certain that we're going to develop morally relevant systems in the coming years, research like the new report suggests that it's plausible. The uncertainty is enough to warrant further work, and quite clearly there's a real cause for concern here. This is something that it makes sense to take seriously as a possibility. Right now, companies are already trying to figure out what the big questions even are, what's actually happening with model welfare, and what they should do about it. Anthropic isn't in this alone. Even Google DeepMind is getting in on the action, and they just put up a job listing looking for a research scientist to dive into some fascinating societal questions about machine thinking, consciousness, and working together in systems. Last year, Anthropic's CEO, Dario Amodei, mentioned that AI consciousness could become a real thing pretty soon. Just recently, one of the alignment leads from the company pointed out that AI companies really need to start setting up plans for AI welfare and to tackle some easy fixes that can make a solid difference. And the truth is that there's a ton of easy stuff to explore because there hasn't really been much done so far. One solid direction for more research is to dive into some hands-on studies that focus on model welfare. This means figuring out what features can really matter when it comes to the welfare and whether those models could be considered moral beings. All of the ethical ponderings that we've thought through so far comes from a secular, deracinated, or a rootless perspective. Gene Roddenberry, who is the creator of Star Trek, and the tech bros at Anthropic are all hopelessly stuck in modern morality. Now, we live in a multi-ethnic and multi-religious society with so many different voices arguing complete opposites about what's right and what's wrong that we're down to only two commandments. The first commandment that's left is have a good time. And the second commandment is don't stop anyone else from having a good time. People like to think about their values, but they don't think about where their values and obligations come. But if you feel that you're getting value from this episode, I would very much be obliged if you would push the like button. Pushing like lets me know that I'm making content you want to see, and it spreads that content to others. And I thank you for supporting this channel. So the two Star Trek episodes are both rooted in anti-slavery ethic. Usually the Gene Roddenberrys and the anthropic ethicists have a harder time telling us why they believe in equality. After all, most societies practiced slavery until less than 2 centuries ago, and many still do today. While slavery itself was present and prescribed in the Bible, beliefs in the abolition of slavery and the equality of all people also came from the Western interpretation of the Bible. We interpret Genesis chapter 1, verses 27 to 28, where it says that humans are made in God's image and get to rule over other creatures, as an indication that all people are created equal. Just like that passage set up this whole hierarchy between humans and other beings, it also made it clear that we have unique moral duties because of our divine resemblance. Today's AI companies are stuck in a similar bind. They're making these artificial beings that might have qualities we would normally think give them moral standing, like consciousness, the ability to act on their own, or even the capacity to feel pain. See, you can learn about negative reinforcement on reinforcement learning models, while still holding the reins over them. It reflects that classic tension between having control and bearing responsibility, leading us to ask whether we've got to think about the welfare of these AI creations, kind of like how being made in God's image means that we carry some special moral duties. This whole idea of what it means to be made in a higher being's image gets even more interesting when we think about whether AIs, crafted in our own image, through our own tech skills, might deserve some of the same moral consideration that God showed to humans. Given that that sort of divine spark may have been passed to humans, would it then pass through to the AIs? And therefore, even though we created them and we could be masters over them, we might need to show some level of moral deference. In this super new era, there's a ton of work ahead of us. We're all just starting to wrap our heads around all these questions, and honestly, we don't have any solid answers on the big philosophical questions or the practical ones either. But I have a feeling this could really matter as we move forward, so we're doing our best to kick things off and make some headway now. Leave a comment on your opinion. Don't stop now. I have dozens more videos. This video is part of a playlist, which I'll post for you here so that you can go through and watch other videos that are similar, or you can watch our newest videos, and we have lots of other playlists. So keep clicking, keep watching. Click over there, right there.